since becoming a chief exec, is that giving you a different perspective on that? Would you go back now and advise your younger self to do anything different?
How would I advise my younger self? I see. We have been in this organisation quite collaborative because we didn't have the chief executive model. It had this corporate director model, had its benefits, but it had its significant disadvantages, and that's why we moved away from it. But there was an opportunity for people to collaborate because you didn't have that. It was seen at the time, that hierarchy. But what I would say to my younger self is to build more alliances and not, I'm to say my view was the children's services were the single most important part of the council, and I was really, quite adamant that was the case, but not everybody understood that, appreciated it, or agreed with it, and I perhaps could have spent longer trying to educate them or inform them about why that is. You only have to look and speak to people in economic development or housing or planning and understand that, whenever we get in and help families much earlier, and young people achieve success and families are helped, it benefits all parts of the council. And I perhaps was too directorate focused, spent an awful lot of time, as was necessary at the time, working and focused on my own part of the organisation, and perhaps wasn't building those alliances early enough. So that's very important to do, and there's ways of doing it. It's the development of business plans together, being clear what you can do to assist other directorates to meet their goals and their business plans. And as I said before, getting involved and not speaking in children's services jargon, and where there are opportunities for cross-directorate work streams or plans, to really get involved in them, and not to do it all yourself, to get your heads of service and and your really bright staff in the more junior parts of the organisation to engage, and I think that helps open up all of the doors, and that really does make things happen for you. And of course, the biggest key to all of this is getting your lead member, getting the leader of the council on board, and making sure that they really understand what it is that you're trying to achieve. And it's about being really open to having honest, transparent conversations where you're not afraid to be challenged. And I was asked what I would be prioritizing when I became the chief executive, and what we've done is the last couple of weeks we've launched what we're calling our identity. We could have called it a wheelchair or anything else, which is a framework really for a set of behaviours, values, but also tools that we're going to use to improve. And a lot of it's quite a lot of it's based in what we did in children's services to develop that part of the organisation. But a lot of it is around good core social work values, and the way that we made our improvements in children's services was being really honest with one another about what we could do better, and to have really robust conversations. So honesty and it's difficult having those challenging conversations, but that's what we're introducing now for the rest of the organisation. So that honesty is very important to us here.
That brings us to the very last question, Terence, and that's really what your top 3 tips are to any new director about how to work successfully with their chief executive. You chief executives come in all types of personality. So what? Go on. Top 3 tips.
I suppose you've got to get. Some of the DCSs will be social workers. Some of the DCSs will have an education background or commissioning background. But everyone who's a DCS has come into children's services to make a difference. So remember your value base, remember why you've done the job. And if you're honest with your chief executive, and you have that value base, they'll see that straight away, and they'll understand that you're doing the job for the right reasons. And I think that honesty in approach is probably the single most important thing in building that relationship. And if you're a DCS, by now you'll have known how to establish relationships with individuals, but your relationship is to your chief executive. As a DCS, you'll be a member appointment, but you need that chief executive on side to deliver those resources for you. So spend time building that relationship. For those, the second one is for those chief executives who are new to children's services, don't have that background, they will be wholly reliant at the start on your expertise. But don't inform your chief executive, educate your chief executive. But like I said earlier with your lead member, you know, tell them and educate them about what it is they need to know, and bring them along rather than just be a transactional telling them what's happening. You'll benefit more from it, and so will the organization. And if you are a DCS working with someone who was a DCS like me, then keep them up to date. Things change. You know, children's services won't be the same as whenever I was a DCS. There are practice changes, legislation changes, yeah, and you know, so my DCS, Lucy, he needs to keep on educating me on what's changed. And then the third one is don't just have conversations about the two things people think DCS are only interested in, money and Ofsted. There is more to your role, lots more to your role than money and Ofsted. Your chief executive will have a hook, everybody does, about what it is that they're interested in. What particularly is it? Is it education? Is it working with the most vulnerable families? Is it, you know, domestic abuse or child abuse? You know, any of that. Find what the hook is, and make them interested in your part of the organization. Because what I have learned is that with the best will in the world, as a chief executive, you don't have enough time to spend on every part of the organization, and you become really reliant on your top team. So I'm completely reliant on the corporate directors and the DCS keeping me up to date and informing me, and I you know, I rely as much on them as they do on me.